We are now ready for our keynote speaker of the morning. René Carayol is a world-renowned leadership expert and a best-selling author known for his transformative insights into building high-performance teams and driving organizational success. René inspires audiences to embrace bold leadership strategies. There's that word bold again that we heard yesterday. And he's going to talk about driving lasting impact and transformation. So let's welcome to the stage René Carayol.
Thank you, Amy, and good morning. I just wanted to take a moment to thank Mike. That was an outstanding presentation. Please give one more round of applause to Mike, please. Outstanding, outstanding. You could not help but be moved, and he set me up beautifully. One world, one movement. How do we want the world to change? Everyone in this auditorium can be a leader if they choose to be. No one makes you a leader. It's not a rank, it's not a job title, it's not hierarchy. It's mindset and attitude. Let me say it again so I don't lose it. Because by the time I finish with you here today, I want to have a load of leaders alongside me here in this auditorium. Everyone in this auditorium can be a leader if they choose to be. It's your choice. And some of you are going to be champions. Everyone can be a leader, and most of you will be champions. I haven't been to Boston for 20 years. When I was here last, leadership was something very different to what it is today. If I looked at all the leading businesses, companies, corporations, organizations in the world, they were all hierarchical, the pyramid hierarchy. And sat atop that hierarchy was the cleverest man in the room. And I choose my words very carefully. They made every call. They made every decision. They solved every problem. They authorized every process. Nothing happened without their say-so. That's only 20 years ago. 20 years ago, the world was so much slower than it is today. It was so much more incremental that one person could make all those calls on their own. About 15 years ago, we saw the advent of amazing technology, multifaceted technology, complex technology. It brought velocity, speed, complexity, so much so that one person couldn't make all the calls on their own anymore. And as a coach, we saw the most exciting period of coaching. Collaboration was the new leadership. It wasn't one person, it was the team. Things were moving so quickly, it was so complex, it needed the team. It completely changed the way the organizations and corporations worked. It gave opportunities to so many more to be part of that leadership. Then along came the pandemic. And maybe the biggest change in leadership I've ever witnessed. Now, your people, your colleagues, your resources could be anywhere in the world, from any time zone, from any background, from many different faiths, many different forms of education. All of a sudden, the leader had to change as well. Probably the most exciting bit of leadership we see. The role of the leader now was to create an environment where everyone can flourish, no matter what their background. They could bring their authentic self to their place of work, knowing they would not be forced to fit in, knowing they wouldn't be judged, knowing they were part of something special. This is the biggest driver of performance we have ever seen. Where people feel they belong. People feel they're included. This needs a new form of leadership. What Mike was saying about what you're doing in Ukraine is really, really vital. We've seen maybe the most broken nation in Europe after World War II rise from its knees because their president and the first lady have created an environment where everyone can flourish no matter what their background. Far too many years ago, I had the special experience of meeting Nelson Mandela. I was coaching the chief executive of Barclays Africa in South Africa, Maria Ramos. It was announced that Nelson Mandela was coming to meet her team and spend a couple of hours at their executive meeting, which I was facilitating. He was coming at 9 o'clock and leaving at 11 o'clock. At 8:30, I was outside taking in the vibe, getting ready to meet one of my heroes. And I was in the courtyard along with the gardeners, the cleaners, the security men, just preparing for the great man's visit. The red carpet wasn't out yet when all of a sudden, a limousine pulled up. The driver came out, opened the back door, and out stepped Nelson Mandela. He wasn't due till 9 o'clock. The car drove off. He walked around the courtyard. He shook the hand of everyone who was in the courtyard, the cleaners, the gardeners, the security, and myself. A moment I would never forget. 15 minutes later, the car came back, he stepped in it and it disappeared. 9 o'clock, the red carpet's out now, the limousine came back. Out stepped Nelson Mandela, Maria was there, was greeted straight into the executive meeting. He spent 2 hours in there, gave a fabulous speech. At 11 o'clock, he left, waved goodbye to everyone, the car disappeared. 15 minutes later, the car came back. The driver opened the back door and out stepped Nelson Mandela. He walked back round the courtyard. Everyone he'd met before, he met again. But he did something special. He'd remembered everyone's first name. He just remembered everyone's first name. Guess how that made them feel? When he came to me and said, "Hello, René," guess how that made me feel? This is leadership. This is leadership. It's not the big, amazing things, it's the little things we do every day that demonstrates our care, our compassion, our courage, our competence. But we put people first all the time. The question, thank you. Thank you. The question I get asked perennially more than any other, a leader's born or a leader's made? A leader's born or a leader's made? Well, let's ask some people far more knowledgeable than I am.
Oh, it's a difficult one. Homework's tough. That's a great question.
That's a difficult question.
I think leaders are born.
I think they're made. The truly great leaders, it's in you.
I would have to say both.
They're born.
I don't think they're born leaders.
I absolutely think you're made.
I think it's a bit of both.
I think they can be born, but I also think they can be made.
Let's go ahead and say made. Both.
Leaders are born. I think there's probably more made than born.
Both.
Developed.
It's truly a combination.
Bit of both.
Some learned attributes and maybe some natural something.
I actually feel it's a natural thing that you...
Stop. Leaders are definitely not born. Definitely not born. I believe leaders are found. Leaders are found. I have a ton of leaders in this auditorium. I want to find you today, where you work, your colleagues, people in your team. There are leaders there, they've not yet been discovered. Liberate them, find them, empower them. The regional leader is coming to visit for the first time since the pandemic. Hasn't met this region for 3 years. David is chosen to organize a social evening. It's going to be pizzas. David gets around, sees everyone, organises the pizzas, and the regional director comes in. A bit disappointing, hardly anyone showed up. A month later, he's going to come back. This time, Sally's been chosen to organise it. She gets around, she speaks to everyone on the evening. The place is packed. Why? Sally cajoled, Sally coaxed, Sally nudged, Sally persuaded, Sally influenced, Sally was all over the place. Sally used everything she had to get people to turn up. Sally's a leader. Many of you in this room are leaders. It's a choice. No one makes you a leader. It's not the job title, it's not the rank. It's your mindset and attitude. We're lucky enough to do some work with the Beverly Wilshire Hotel in Los Angeles. 7 years on the trot, voted #1 hotel in the world. It's where they filmed Pretty Woman, of course. And everything you saw on Pretty Woman, believe me, is true. But that doesn't happen overnight. They work at it. Todd, the general manager, is amazing. He does something so simple, so effective, so brilliant, so leadership. They have 3 African-American doormen who run the 3 8-hour shifts every day. When you're a luxury hotel, the door, the entrance, is the touch point of your brand. These 3 guys are astonishing. They pump up the volume every day. They're pleased to meet and greet everyone. Everyone gets the most special attention. How? Why? Every Friday morning, Todd has a managers meeting. It starts at 10 o'clock. He invites the 3 doormen every week. They are not managers. He invites them every week. They are not item number 9. They are not item number 23. They are item number 1. At the start of every manager's meeting, Todd says, so guys, what have we got to learn from this week? Tell us about the customers. What have we done well? What do we need to do differently? What worked? Just by asking them the question at the manager's meeting, guess how he makes them feel? They're the most important people in that world. He's just created a connection. Should he listen to anything they say? He's created engagement. Should he act on anything they say? Whew. Now you're talking. He's created something so special. He's created trust. What happens when people feel trusted? They go the extra mile. Who do you invite to your manager's meeting? Who do you go out of your way to make feel special? This is leadership. Everyone in this auditorium is more than good enough at management, otherwise you wouldn't be here. For me, management is the mission, strategy, plans, tasks, KPIs, everything we can measure. The systems, the processes. If we didn't do them, we'd go out of business tomorrow. But in times of change, in times of turbulence, they're no longer enough on their own. We call them the hardware. Without it, nothing happens. It's the IQ. We think it, we learn it, we touch it, we train it, we measure it. The IQ. I'm talking to you about the EQ. Purpose, vision, people, teams, culture. Purpose, vision, people, teams, culture. The EQ, the emotional intelligence, the emotional quotient. We call this the software. I will no longer talk to you about management for the rest of our time together. We're talking EQ leadership software. And here's my definition of leadership. Leadership is not management. It's how you energize your people towards your vision. Keyword, energize. It's not tell, it's not measure. It's energize. Here's why we obsess about it. Leadership is the art of accomplishing more than the science of management says is possible. When they say it can't be done, get the leaders in. When they say it can't be done, get the leaders in. We're talking culture change here. We need leaders, we need champions. Champions are those people who provide you with the air cover, who sponsor you, who are there for you, who encourage you, who are your sounding board, who when it's going really, really tough, it's really difficult, they've got your back. We've worked with a bunch of brands over the last few years. Many industries, all 5 continents. Every single one of these businesses going through some level of change or transformation. Standing still is death. Lucky enough to have coached a bunch of leaders, heads of state, chief executives all around the world. Not one of these is an all-rounder. Not one of these is brilliant at everything. Every one of them, every one of us is brilliant at something. We don't waste time on the remedial coaching. We don't work on your limitations. We don't work on the things you're not so good at. We try to find the 2 or 3 things you're outstanding at, fine-tune them, hone them, get them to near Olympian standard. No one can be brilliant at everything, but the team can be brilliant at everything. But it starts with everyone working on the things they're outstanding at. We call them spikes. When everyone in the team is exposing a spike, the team does so much more, so much quicker, so much better. You'll probably recognize me somewhere there. My parents came from the British colony of Gambia to London in the early 1960s. Like many of the old colonies, they had primary education, secondary education. There was no tertiary education, no colleges, no universities. They sold up and gave up everything they had to come to the mother country, Britain, to the city of London, to give their children a chance of getting degrees and going back home and living happily ever after. When they came to London in the early 1960s, it was the most expensive city on the planet. Their life savings meant access to not the best housing, which meant access to not the best schooling. I was really, really lucky. I managed somehow to get to university. I managed somehow to work for a massive retailer, Marks and Spencer's, and did 10 years there. Then the phone rang. It's Pepsi. They're looking for a board director. I just knew it couldn't be me. They had the wrong person. Of course they got the wrong person. It could never be me. It just so happened it was me. It's April 1992. I'd never been in a boardroom. I'm appointed to the board of Pepsi. I'm working upstate New York in Purchase. I've been appointed to the board of Pepsi. I just knew they had the wrong person. I knew I'd be found out. I knew it was only a matter of time. I was that confident. This was before Google. As history would have it, my first day of work was a board meeting. I'm going to be found out. I'm going to be found out. I met my colleagues in those dark days of April 1992. There were 7 of us on the board, all men. I was the only non-American. I didn't look like my colleagues. I didn't sound like my colleagues. They gave me the warmest of welcomes. They could not have been more open. They could not have been more hospitable. They did everything to make me feel at home. I'm going to be found out. I am going to be found out. As we're sitting there and we're getting to know each other, I'm nervous. The door opens and in walks Larry. Larry is the group chief executive. I'm going to be found out. Gentlemen, let me introduce you to René, our new board director. He had no notes. There was no Google. Let me tell you a little bit about René. René's parents left Gambia in the early 1960s. I nearly fainted. I had never put this on a CV, never put it on an application form. I never thought it was going to help me anywhere. How did he know this? He continued. René's parents came to London. He talked through my junior school, high school, in chronological order with no notes. Guess how he was making me feel? For the first time in my life, someone was talking positively, just about me. The fear soon disappeared. I realized he was praising me. He wanted me to be there. He talked through my university degree with no notes. I'm now feeling on top of the world. Most of all, he talked through my 10 years at Marks & Spencer's as a merchandiser. I did 9 different roles. He talked about them in chronological order. Guess how I was feeling now? I was on top of the world. There was nothing I would not do for Larry. It took 3 to 4 minutes. No. It lasted me a lifetime. In those 3 to 4 minutes, he kicked the imposter out the window. I no longer felt I didn't deserve to be there. I felt part of something special. Back in those days, there was a series on TV called Mission Impossible. My colleagues nicknamed me Mission Impossible. Because when Larry had a job that couldn't be done, he gave it to me, and do you know what? I never let him down. Because of those 3 to 4 minutes. Today, we might call that inclusion. Back then, it didn't have a name. It was just amazing leadership. This is what I'm talking to you about. Creating an environment where everyone can flourish, no matter what their background. They can bring their authentic self to their place of work, feeling as though they're going to flourish, they're going to thrive. They won't be judged, they won't be forced to fit in. This is the new age leadership. I'm writing my latest book called Simpatico, which is a look at inclusive leadership. This is the new leadership. This is what matters. To me, this is what Mike was talking about. I was standing back and it made me feel $1 million what you guys are doing. It's no longer fix the people. It's fix the environment. And that's what you're doing collectively. Enabling others to have a chance that they wouldn't have had before. It takes some courage. Because now when we see inappropriate behavior, when we feel someone's being marginalized, when we feel someone hasn't found their voice, are being treated badly, we as leaders need to call it out, but with forgiveness. Give people a chance to change. Give people a chance to learn. Be the coach. When we come across someone who is underrepresented, who's marginalized, who may not feel that they fit in, give up more authority than feels natural. Empower them. Trust them. Watch the return on investment. If we experience something that clearly isn't right, give some honest feedback, but do it with care. Be the coach. Be the mentor. Enable them to change. Most of all today, Be more compassionate than you think you need to be. Just be more compassionate than you think you need to be. Look out for each other, look after each other. It's the new leadership. You'll be able to download the presentation, and I'm sure that everyone can have this to share with their colleagues later. 3 women working on a building site, breaking rocks. It's the toughest work you've ever seen. They're dripping in sweat. The journalist comes to the first one and says, "Why do you do this work?" "I haven't worked for 3 years. I took the first job I could get." Goes to the second one, "Why do you do this work?" "I've got a husband and 3 kids to feed. I took the first job I could get." Comes to the third one, "Why do you do this work?" She looks up proudly, wipes the sweat from her brow, and looks him in the eye and says, "I'm helping to build a cathedral. I'm helping to build a cathedral." It might be a mosque, a temple, or a synagogue, depending on where you are. I'm helping to build that cathedral. I'm not just doing a manual, repetitive, meaningless task. I'm part of something special. The role of today's leader: ensure everyone in your team, every one of your colleagues feels they're contributing to building that cathedral. Everyone is essential. Everyone is vital. Your role: be visible enough to contact everyone and let them understand how special they are. Without their efforts, we don't build that cathedral. Everyone is essential. You're the person they need to believe in. The cathedral is something they want to belong to. Some amazing research came out during the pandemic. During the Great Resignation, where retention was a big issue, the research looked at what is it that's going to make people stick. Learning was an obvious one. Ongoing development, 4.8 times more likely to stay. Clarity. Let's remove all the ambiguity we can, 5.6 times more likely to stay. The one we've always chased historically, trust, 5.8 times more likely to stay. Here's the big news. Here's the big news. Purpose. In a purpose-driven organization, 9.2 times more likely to stay. Little reminder, I'm talking about you. In an environment that's inclusive, 9.4 times more likely to stay. We all want something to belong to. We want to know there's a purpose behind what we're trying to achieve. I put it to you, you're in a very special place. We're spending a lot of time helping businesses, organizations move from homogenous, but all come from similar backgrounds. They want to get to something a little bit more diverse. They want to get to something more inclusive. And the ultimate promised land is belonging. The big news that we found: go from homogenous to inclusive before you get to diverse. Enable people to feel that they're needed and wanted. As I've said so many times before, create an environment where people can bring their authentic selves to their place of work. Champions help drive that inclusion. Champions help leaders change culture. Champions are people who are there when the going gets tough. They don't do the heavy lifting. They're there to support. They're there to sponsor. I was privileged enough to work with Ross McEwen. When he was appointed Chief Executive of the Royal Bank of Scotland, just a little retake on history. For over a couple hundred years, Royal Bank of Scotland was a tiny provincial bank based just outside of Edinburgh, the capital of Scotland, in the UK. By 2005, it was the biggest bank on the planet, bar none. Its growth was astonishing, but it was too quick. It was too fast. It was too risky. It was too entrepreneurial. And it imploded. When the chief executive was moved on by the British government, Ross was running the retail bank. Ross was asked to take over. Ross is from New Zealand, fabulous guy. Every business has its, what they call its SLT, senior leadership team. The people beneath the top, the chief executive and the chair, who run the business. It's what we call chief executive plus two, not the direct reports executive, but everyone else. They had an SLT, a senior leadership team of some 250 people. They do the day-to-day running of the business. Ross decided he was going to change it. He was advised by everyone, don't. They're the people that run the business. You can't afford to tinker with it. He felt maybe they were part of the issues. He wanted something smaller. He wanted something fresher. He wanted some of the deep talent in the bank to get to the top. He shrunk it to 100. 50 of them, deep promotions from within. Everybody who was removed from it, Ross went and saw them in person. They only lost 2 people. He told everyone in person why he was removing them. Many of them stayed. We call this leadership. When he got to the 100, he decided he was going to have one day with all the 100. I was going to run that day with him. It was going to be in London. There was no real great announcement. Emails were sent. Turn up. Registration, 8:30. Coffee, 9 o'clock. We're starting straight at 9:30. No badges. No names. No content. Ross and I had been on site from 6:30 preparing the day. At 9:30, people started filing in. Ross was at the door. He welcomed everyone individually. He shook their hands. He knew their first names. 100 people. He knew their first names. He had an individual message for everyone who came in. It took about 45 minutes for people to come in. Guess what the atmosphere was like in that room? I'd never experienced anything like it. This is leadership. Hope you've picked up by now. No one remembers a departmental strategy, no matter how scintillating and brilliant you may think it is. Everyone remembers David and Goliath. Leaders tell stories. Managers talk strategy. We've had the privilege of working with Angela Ahrendts. Quite possibly the best leader we've had the privilege of working with. Just brilliant.
Great brands and great businesses have to be great storytellers too. We have to tell authentic stories, emotive, compelling stories. And I think even more so because we're nonfiction. And we are building a lifelong relationship with people. And every great relationship has to be built on trust. The company's been around 150 years. It's a big, great story. We were actually celebrating the 150th anniversary when I started. Christopher and I, in one of our very first group meetings, stood up in front of all of the associates in the UK, and in that very first presentation, we told the team an amazing novel had been written about the company. So we actually brought in a cultural anthropologist to study the company, to make sure that we understood the story. And we said we should capture this story for the last 5 years so that we can pass it on to the next generation so that they understand how we've built this amazing culture, how we've turned or transformed the brand around. and that we weren't looking to write another book, but we were looking to write some really new, exciting chapters. Trust is a really big part of the values of the company, and it almost underpins every form of communication. Any constituency who's touching your brand or your business, associates, business partners, consumers, or investors, they want to trust that you're going to deliver the message, the feeling, the product that you said you were. We wanted one story that everybody could feel, everybody could see, and not just feel the emotion, but feel the energy. Everybody's a storyteller. I don't care if it's a business, a brand, a writer, a musician. Everybody's telling their life story. Yes, we've been telling a compelling fashion story, and yes, we've been telling a young millennial story and a heritage story, and of course it's got to be British, but we've also been telling a very strong value story. And I don't think the world's ever going to want to stop hearing stories.
Marissa worked at Burberry. She'd been there some 7 years, and she was there before Angela joined. I'd been mentoring Marissa for some 5 years. When Angela joined, Marissa changed. It felt like she was 6 inches taller. She had more confidence. She had a spring in her step. She was energized by Angela. Every year, Angela would have 3 or 4 development dinners. 8,000 people worked for Burberry around the world. The development dinners were held in London at the head office. They weren't really fast track. They weren't about recognizing people and making them more important. But everyone wanted to attend the development dinners with Angela. As it should have it, one day, Marissa called me going crazy. I've been invited to dinner, I've been invited to dinner, I've been invited to, what do I wear, what do I say, what do I do? Calm down, just calm down. We talked about it, we had a few sessions, she was really excited. There was something magnetic about Angela and her presence. 3 days before the dinner, Marissa called me in tears. René, I'm not going to be able to make the dinner. You'll never believe what's happened. 10 years ago, my nephew was tragically murdered. The person that killed him was given a life sentence. They're up for parole on the same day as the dinner with Angela. The parole hearing is taking place in Glasgow, some 400 miles north of London. I'll never be able to attend that and go to the dinner. I've lost my uncle, I've lost my aunt, I'm the last surviving member of the family. I have to go to that hearing. He cannot be let off for what he did. What do I do? Marissa, everything you've told me, you're going to put into a handwritten note and you're going to give it in person to Angela. She wrote down what she'd said. It was painful. She walked up to Angela's office. Angela was in a meeting. She left the envelope with Angela's PA. 20 minutes later, Angela was standing in front of Marissa's desk with a handwritten note for Marissa. There'll be plenty of times for us to have dinner in the future, she told Marissa, but you need to be up in Glasgow. They hugged. They shed a tear. In moments, that story went around the Burberry grapevine. In moments, that story started to pick at the Burberry culture. In moments, it was endorsing the type of leadership that Angela stood for. Managers talk strategy. Leaders tell stories. Culture is more powerful than strategy. We got the call from Deutsche Telekom, the massive German global telecoms giant. 100,000 colleagues, 100 billion euro market capitalization. They're huge. The chief executive, Tim, has 60 direct reports. Let me say it again so we don't miss it. 60 direct reports. Each of them is a country manager. Chief executive of the Brazil business, chief executive of the Portuguese business, all reporting into Tim. Brilliant guy. They were coming together face to face for the first time since the pandemic. They're meeting in Cologne in Germany. for the first time, Tim and his 60 direct reports, they gave us the first 3 hours of their first day together to talk inclusion with them. They were losing so many brilliant people at the top of the company who weren't German. They knew they had an issue around inclusion. In the preparation for this session, we asked for 2 people more junior to the 60 within the company who came from different backgrounds to spend some time with us so we could coach them and mentor them. They were going to tell their stories in front of the 60. When I turned up, it took some time to get the undivided attention of everyone in the room. I had to create a psychologically safe space so these more junior members will feel they could share their story. It was going to be intimidating, speaking to the top 60 in the company. They were noisy. They hadn't seen each other for a long time. They were boisterous. It took a bit of time. In the end, I had to stand right in front of Tim. He shut his laptop, put it under his chair. He closed his mobile and put it in his pocket. Then nearly everyone else in the room followed. I still waited. I still pushed. A psychologically safe space where every voice can be heard, where people won't feel they'll be judged. The first of our colleagues came in. I was interviewing him. He told the following story. I'm 3rd generation German. My great-great-grandparents came from Pakistan over 40 years ago. I've spent 17 years in the company. It's the best company I could ever hope to work for. It's brilliant. I love working here. Every now and again, I have a private thought. I just wish I could find a private place to say a prayer to myself. I've never found that private place. I've never really asked, so I'm not sure it'd be received in the right way. The room was silent. I asked them how that made them feel. Everyone told me what they thought. I'd push them back. I didn't ask you what you thought. I asked you how that made you feel. EQ, not IQ. Eventually, one of the few women in the room stood up. She said, I get involved in nearly all of the office moves. It would be really easy to accommodate a private place for prayer. I've never thought about it, it's never been mentioned, it's never been requested. I could easily do that. There was silence everywhere. Then one of the colleagues stood up. He happened to be the chief executive of Turkey, the Turkish business. And he said with a pained look on his face, I don't know why I'm going to share this, but I just feel that I can. It was a psychologically safe space. He could share. I'm 3rd generation German. My great-great-parents came from Turkey many, many years ago. I've been with the company for 27 years. What a fabulous place to work. I love working here. But whenever there's any sort of terrorist activity anywhere in Germany, I'm instantly uninvited from meetings. No one talks to me at the coffee machine. I'm cold-shouldered, isolated, and I've never known why. In our private lives, my wife and I are uninvited from dinner invitations. It lasts about 6 to 8 weeks and everything goes back to normal. I've never felt I could say anything about it. Today, I feel I can say it. You could have heard a feather drop in the room. It was silent, introspective. People were hurting. I asked them again, how does that make you feel? One of the colleagues jumped up. He shouted, ashamed. I looked at Tim, the chief executive. He stood up, he spoke. In that moment, every one of the people in that room fully understood the prize that inclusion brings. fully understood the power of belonging, creating an environment where everyone can flourish no matter what their background. The biggest driver of business performance that we have seen. To be purpose-led and performance-driven is the dream of every organization. The little time I've spent with you, and I'll refer to Mike again, the purpose is there, it's bold, it's real. The performance is the opportunity, which you've been talking about yesterday and will continue to talk about. When we see change of this magnitude, we see 4 roles. This is the way we've seen culture change best. We did some work for Marsh McLennan, big American insurance company, 80,000 colleagues. Dan Glazer, the chief executive, was celebrating their 150th anniversary, and he'd realized in 150 years, they'd never had an African-American executive. They'd tried from inside, they'd tried to grow them, they'd tried to appoint them, it just hadn't worked. So we were chosen to work with them to see if we could change this. They put together a cohort of 80 of their best African-American managers from Canada, US, and the UK. Something amazing happened. More by chance than design. Each one of these 80 colleagues was given a senior executive. They were given 4 senior executives to work with them. One was a mentor. Role, to get the best version of you possible. Another was a coach. Role, to get the best version of you for Marsh McLennan possible. The third was an advocate. Role, talk you up when you're not around. The fourth was a sponsor. Role, one job only, get you promoted. In this relationship of working with someone who was very different from you, the senior executives had the opportunity to walk in the shoes of people they didn't know that much about. They worked wonders with the cohort. They worked even more wonders with their colleagues as senior executives at the top of the company. They learned they had to create safer spaces. They learned they had to listen intentionally. They learned from people who weren't like them. They learned what it was like to be different. They learned what it might be like to be excluded. They learned about those who didn't have voice. It changed them as leaders. The culture at Marsh McLennan changed for the better. Before we'd finished the program, we had 12 promotions. Phenomenal. Now, here's the lesson. Some research came out of Harvard that said mentees get a 16% career acceleration from a mentoring relationship. Quite obvious. Mentors get a 53% career acceleration from a mentoring relationship. This is the big news. Just as we saw at Marsh McLennan, the role of the mentor, especially, and it's heightened when the mentee is different from you, from a different background, it's a game changer. It changes how you lead. It forces you to lead differently. Here's the lesson. Go find yourself a mentee, go find yourself a mentor. It's the mentee that will grow you most. Champions, champions, champions. One of the best people I've had the privilege of working with in this area of inclusion is Apple, and this speaks for itself.
Open. Open a door, and it opens all the others. Open a mind, and see what happens next. No great thing, no beautiful invention was created in a vacuum. It happens when we leave our comfort zone and come together. Embrace faiths, cultures, disabilities, differences. Embrace races, ages, ideologies, personalities. creating a tool or device nobody saw coming. Humanity is plural, not singular. The best way the world works is everybody in, nobody out. So who we're made of is everyone. Differences not just celebrated, but essential. Many more women in charge. Equal pay for equal work everywhere. A new generation of Apple, more diverse than the one that came before. Open is not just who we are, but what we believe as a company. Because humanity isn't singular, it's plural. The truth is, we don't see things the same. The power is, we don't see things the same.
Hey, it's the truth. We are so much stronger together. You know this. When we come together, we can do the impossible. Let me remind you again, call it out, but with forgiveness. You've got more authority than feels natural. Be brutally honest with care. Be more compassionate than you think you need to be. I was lucky enough to coach Ralph Hammers when he was chief executive of ING Bank in the Netherlands. He'd go on to become chief executive of UBS, the big Swiss banking giant. He was their youngest ever appointee at ING. He was the longest serving. He was 43 years old. When he took over, he lasted 7 years. He was one of the most inclusive leaders I've ever had the privilege of working with. See for yourself. Just listen to this. Just listen to his language. And whilst you're listening, imagine what it would be like to work for Ralph.
How will you deal with such a competitive marketplace?
Yeah, the marketplace is competitive. At the same time, you need to have guts. You need to have courage to change. And I think ING has shown the courage in the past to really go into markets and reshape the industry, reshape the models.
What gives you that courage?
I believe that if any institution in the world can pull this one off, if any team in the world can pull it off, if any group of employees can pull it off, it is us. We've shown it in the past in various ways, and I'm confident we can show it in the future. But it will not come without changes. Changes in the way we organize ourselves, changes in the culture, changes in the sort of people that we need for this, the different skills. But if any company, if any bank, if any financial institution, if any insurance company can pull it off, it's us.
That's leadership. That's inclusive leadership. That's having the back of your people. That's being proud of your people. That was the cathedral. So I want to pull this all together now. I've spoken to you about leadership, I've spoken to you about inclusion, and I've spoken to you about a culture of coaching. I've said to you that everyone in this auditorium can be a leader if they choose to be. I'm going to bring this all together now as we head towards our close. This is the culture of coaching. She has the voice of an angel. She's young, she's brilliant, she's precocious. She's got all the capability in the world. She's entered many singing contests, she's won many. But this is the big one. It's Saturday afternoon, it's the nationally televised basketball game right across America. She's going to sing the national anthem. She's been waiting for this. But something happens, as it happens to all of us. At that moment, she's sung the national anthem so many times, she can recite it off by heart. Something happens. Is it nerves? Is it anxiety? Who knows? She crumbles. She crumbles. And that well-intentioned American audience is trying to cheer her up, and it makes things a little worse. But someone somewhere, the champion, the coach, the leader, has her back. Has her back. This brings everything I've spoken to you together. Let me say it again. Everyone in this auditorium can be a leader if they choose to be. Many of you can be champions.
And now to honor America and salute the men and women serving our country with our national anthem, please welcome, as voted by you, the fans, our winner of the Toyota Get the Feeling of a Star promotion, Natalie Gilbert.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the stars like stars? Stars like last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight. Oh, the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare and the singing air gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave for the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Do you think she will ever forget him? No. Will we ever forget him? No. I don't want you to forget that. This is what I've been talking about. Every one of you can be a coach if you choose to be. Thank you. And here's your mantra. Maya Angelou, not many remember everything you said, but everyone remember how you made them feel. This is the new leadership. And let me close off now. 10 top tips. 10 top tips. You won't forget them. Number 1, lead by example. It's not what you say, it's what you do. Number 2, assemble a band of believers. It's much too hard to have a bunch of cynics around you. Number 3, be as open and transparent as you can. Share the plan and everyone will charge a hill with you. Number 4, the 4 most powerful words you can use on your change journey. What do you think? What do you think? Ask everyone. Number 5, inclusion is where it really counts. Diversity is great, inclusion is everything. Diversity is the science, inclusion is the art. The illiterate of the 21st century won't be those who can't read and write, it'll be those who can't learn, unlearn, and relearn. Learn, unlearn, relearn. Everyone is brilliant at something. Find out what your brilliance is. That's your career accelerator. Sometimes, just get out of the way. Let the team get on with it. Get out of the way. Go and make the pizza. Go and do something else. Get out of the way. Great players don't win trophies. Great teams win trophies. Great teams win trophies. Finally, be the leader you want to follow. If you're not sure what to do, be the leader you want to follow. If you're bold, you might fail. If you're not bold, you will fail. Thank you so much for listening to me today. Thank you for your attention. Thank you.